Hello, my name is Dr. Michael Harrison. I'm a senior lecturer in economics and finance in the Royal Dutch School of Business and Law, which is part of the University of East London. In this video, I want to talk about some of the work I've been doing with the Policing, Innovation, Enterprise and Learning Centre, which is based in the Royal Dutch School of Business and Law. This is a practice-based centre, and we have been running a project for around about the last year now, exploring ways to limit the ability to realise profit from criminal enterprise. And this has become quite an ambitious and interdisciplinary project. So on the one hand, we have a very criminology-based approach that contacts leave traces. And on the other hand, we have a very fintech-based approach, because we now believe that the financial system is coming to a point where, with a little bit more technology applied, it may be possible to give regulators additional tools and powers to identify what is clean money and what is money tainted by profit from criminal activity. Traditional microeconomics and more recent research in microeconomics illustrates that most criminal enterprise, at least serious and organised crime, is actually run on business models and is therefore run for profit. Therefore, a serious disruptive tool is the prevention of the realisation of criminal profit. We are exploring at present 3 strands in order to restrict the ability to realise profit from serious and organised crime. The first and perhaps most obvious of the 3 strands is placing restrictions on the ability for money to remain anonymous. Now, recent legislation put forward in the UK and the United States does improve the link between fiat money and the beneficial ownership of that money. Most of the legislation, however, only applies to firms which are registered. Therefore, this leaves a rather gaping black hole and does allow anonymous money to still exist. In many countries around the world, there is no legislation at all to require beneficial ownership of money to be established before it can be banked. It is the exception, not the norm. We advocate that the law may need to change around this. The second strand of our advocacy is partially related to this. We think there needs to be more beneficial ownership checks where it comes to translating assets into fiat currency. We're particularly interested in this in light of the role that cryptocurrencies now play in global financial markets. There are many cryptocurrencies, primarily Bitcoin, that are completely anonymized by design. It is very difficult for investigators or regulators to identify the owner of a cryptocurrency. Therefore, there needs to be measures taken in order to prevent the realization of criminal profit into fiat currency via the cryptocurrencies. We would say the same thing around gold and diamonds. However, the cryptocurrencies are very much unregulated, very much intangible, and are not covered by existing legislation in most countries at present. What legislation has been put forward in recent years has focused on consumer protection rather than crime prevention. We have a third strand in our advocacy, and we are delighted at the time of recording to have presented this twice now, and that's we are advocating for an accreditation standard that firms may opt into to illustrate that their funds are traceable and that their supply chain is free from cash flow generated from criminal enterprise. We propose that this is possible not by the traditional tools of forensic accounting, but by more modern approaches to machine learning based upon network analysis. Where financial data is publicly available, or where a firm is willing to opt in and share data, it is possible using network analysis to illustrate to a certain standard that a firm is not benefiting from cash which is generated from criminal enterprise. We hope that this may one day work in the same way as the fair trade standards, in that consumers become conscious of the need to isolate themselves from criminal profit, and they will one day believe it is an ethical thing to do, and are willing to seek out firms which are willing to go the extra mile to prove that they do not benefit from criminal profit. At the moment, we've rather dubbed this as blue money, and are working around the idea of how would we market this and how would we operationalize it out to smaller firms whose data is harder to obtain and perhaps a little bit more complex to analyze from a supply chain perspective. One of the key drawbacks in achieving all of our aims is the international element. Much legislation exists at national level, and there are gaps at international levels, leaving opportunity for arbitrage in terms of criminal activity. Where something can't go through the books in one country, it may well go through the books in another. We have identified where global mechanisms do not exist, and one of the three strands that we wish to advocate on as part of this project is the lack of global mechanisms. Further to this, we also identify where institutions have underused capacities in terms of identifying beneficial ownership, where national legislation is weak or does not go far enough. This project has the potential to be very high impact in the very long term, but we appreciate a lot of what we advocate for here is not something which can be put together in the next few years. But we believe as an interdisciplinary centre that by advocating now in the long term, we may achieve positive change in terms of creating a system which is hostile to financial profit from criminal activity. And as the financial system evolves, as fintech moves from 4.0 to 5.0, we think the system by design needs to become more hostile to criminal enterprise. If this project sounds interesting to you, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Professor John Coxhead, the director of the PIEL Centre. We're very happy to speak to people from inside or outside academia who have interest or expertise from the criminology or the finance or technical side.